Welcome to Somni Story. Tonight, there's nothing dramatic to unpack. Just a quiet little story that might feel strangely familiar. It begins with a certain kind of tired, not the kind that a full night's sleep will cure, but the kind that wraps around your bones like fog. Soft, silent, and heavy. A quiet exhaustion that follows you everywhere, even when everything on the outside looks just fine. You're the kind of person who always says yes. Yes to the extra shift, yes to the project no one else wants to touch, yes to the friend who only remembers you when they need something. You say yes even when your shoulders are aching and your chest feels tight and your weekend was the only thing keeping you sane. Because deep down, somewhere you don't talk about, you've always believed that being a good person means being endlessly available. Saying yes became your way of feeling needed, appreciated, maybe even loved. You don't ask for much in return, just a little peace, a little recognition. But what happens when that never really comes? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight and what time is it there? I love seeing the little map we build together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You can't quite remember when it started, this habit of making space for everyone but yourself. Maybe it was in childhood, when being helpful earned you praise and disapproval felt too loud to handle. Or maybe it was later, in school or your first job, when you realized that agreeable people don't get left out. You were always the easy one, the flexible one, the one who could handle it. You wore that label as a badge for years, even when it got heavy. People liked you. That's what mattered, right? But as the years passed, something shifted. The compliments started sounding more like expectations. You're always so reliable, they'd say. And you'd smile while inside you were frantically juggling more than you could carry. You became the default choice for errands, emotional support, unpaid favors, and still, you said yes. Because saying yes meant avoiding guilt. It meant avoiding that sinking feeling that maybe, just maybe, you were being selfish. Even when you felt the edges of burnout fraying your patience, you kept going. After all, you were the nice one. Nice people don't complain. Nice people don't say no. But the truth is, you were getting tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind that seeps into your bones, that makes the sound of your phone buzzing feel like a scream. You'd stare at text messages, your thumbs hovering over, "I'm sorry, I can't." But somehow, it always turned into, "Sure," smiley face. The smiley face was part of the mask. Soft, polite, non-threatening. A way of saying, "Don't worry, I won't make this hard for you." It's a strange thing to apologize for needing rest. You told yourself it was temporary. You'd help this once, then rest. You'd make space for yourself next week. After this project, after this dinner, after this favor. But the favors never stopped. The weeks bled together. And rest became something theoretical, like a place you plan to visit someday but never quite booked the ticket for. No one asked how you were doing. Not really. They saw the smile, the calendar filled with plans, the finished tasks. They assumed you were fine. After all, you never said otherwise. And somewhere in the silence, you started to wonder, if you stopped being so helpful, so agreeable, so endlessly available, would anyone even notice? You start the day with a sigh you don't even notice. It's the kind of quiet exhale that happens before your feet touch the floor. A soft resignation that today, just like yesterday, will demand more of you than you feel ready to give. You check your phone before your eyes are fully open. Messages, reminders, obligations. Someone asking if you can help with something. Someone needing a favor. You stare at the screen, blank for a moment, then begin typing a reply. Of course. Sure. No problem. You don't even think about it. It's automatic. Your morning hasn't even begun and already you're giving yourself away. You shuffle to the kitchen in your softest t-shirt, the one that makes you feel a little safer, a little more like yourself. The coffee machine hums to life, and for a brief second the aroma feels like comfort, like ritual. You take your first sip and try to imagine how the day could go if you had the courage to say no, just once. But that thought passes quickly, replaced by the list running in your mind. The errands, the check-ins, the birthday you nearly forgot, the reply you owe someone. Being nice is a full-time job, and people love you for it. You're the kind of person they describe as thoughtful and generous and always there. But sometimes when they say you're too good for this world, it doesn't feel like a compliment. It feels like an excuse, a way to keep taking, because they know you won't stop them. You don't complain. You make things easier. You absorb tension like a sponge. You smooth over arguments. You say what's needed to keep the peace, even when your own feelings get swallowed in the process. And the worst part is, you've gotten so used to doing it, you don't even realize when it happens anymore. You go through the motions. You check in on people before they check in on you. You offer help before they even ask. You anticipate needs before anyone else even notices them. It's a skill, really, one you didn't ask to learn. One that was shaped by years of reading rooms, noticing shifts in tone, watching facial expressions tighten. You learned how to spot disappointment before it turned into anger, how to fix things before they broke. And somewhere in all that, you became someone who made sure everyone else was okay, whether or not you were. There's a kind of invisible labor in that, the kind that doesn't get thanked or recognized, the kind that gets expected. And slowly, it chips away at you. It makes your needs feel like inconveniences, your rest feel undeserved, your voice feel too loud. So you lower it, soften it. You take up less space. You say yes even when you're tired, even when you're hurting, even when the only reason you agree is because you can't bear the thought of someone thinking less of you. But here's the thing. Underneath all of that, a part of you is whispering that this isn't working anymore, that something in you is beginning to crack. It's in the way you dread your phone lighting up. It's in the way you fantasize about canceling plans, not for anything urgent, just for silence, just to be alone, just to not have to perform. You wonder if anyone would notice if you disappeared for a day. Not in the dramatic sense, just quietly. If you turned off your phone, if you didn't reply to every message immediately, if you didn't fill the empty space in every conversation, what would happen if you let the silence stretch? Would the world fall apart? Would people be disappointed? Or would they simply move on, find someone else to lean on, never even realizing how much you'd been carrying? You're not angry. Not really. It's not about blame. It's about fatigue, about living in a body that feels like a to-do list, about showing up for everyone else so often that you forgot what it feels like to show up for yourself. You sip your coffee again. It's lukewarm now, still comforting, but distant. You glance at the clock and realize you've already lost 15 minutes to this spiral. You shake it off. You have things to do, places to be, people to show up for. So you open your calendar, you answer the message, you type, sure, comma, closing parentheses, one more time. And another tiny piece of yourself slips quietly out of you. The day moves forward as it always does, a blur of tasks and conversations where your face smiles even if your heart doesn't. You're efficient, reliable, pleasant, the kind of person who makes a workplace smoother, a household calmer, a group chat friendlier. People thank you in passing, you're the best, but their gratitude is casual, surface level. They don't see what it costs. And truthfully, you've trained them not to. You've made it look easy. That's the trick. That's the curse. You respond to requests before they turn into demands. You sense someone's hesitation and fill the silence before they can feel awkward. You pick up slack instinctively without drawing attention to yourself. People have come to expect it, and when you stop, even for a moment, it feels like a disruption. They don't realize it, but you do. You've watched their faces shift subtly when you hesitate. You felt the cold air that enters the room when you don't immediately offer. So you keep performing. The smile, the nod, the calm voice. It's all part of the role now, isn't it? You begin to notice the tiny cracks. They appear first in forgetfulness. You miss a deadline, just barely. You overlook a message from someone who expected you to remember their cat's birthday. You forget to eat until your hands start shaking. You lose your temper over something small, then apologize profusely. You're unraveling, but quietly, beautifully, like a fraying ribbon people still find useful. Some days you think, maybe I'm just tired. A proper break will fix this. But deep down, you know it isn't just tiredness. It's depletion, the kind that builds over years, the kind that doesn't go away with a weekend off. You glance at your reflection in the mirror while brushing your teeth. You look fine. That's the dangerous part. You always look fine. Even when your body is aching, your mind is stretched thin, and your soul is begging for silence. You've learned how to package yourself for public consumption. Well-rested, cheerful, functional. You put on the fine mask like it's part of your morning routine, and it fits so well, no one ever questions it. You don't blame them. How could they know what you never let them see? It's hard to explain to people why you're tired when all they see is success. It's hard to say, I'm overwhelmed, when you're the one who always has it together. It's even harder to say, I need help, when you've been everyone's helper for so long, you don't even know what needing looks like anymore. You carry on with your day. You send the email. You reschedule the appointment because someone else asked you to. You remember to check in on your friend who's going through a breakup, even though you've had a lump in your own throat for 3 days straight. You laugh at the right moments. You respond with the right emojis. You thank people when they don't notice how tired you are. You wonder if maybe that's part of the problem. You've become too good at hiding, too practiced in disappearing politely. There's a strange loneliness that comes with being the nice one. You're surrounded by people, but few of them really see you. Not because they don't care, but because you've made it your job to seem okay. And when you finally feel the weight of it all, when your chest gets tight and your thoughts spin, there's no one who knows how to help you because you never taught them how to. You taught them how to lean on you, not how to hold you. And today, like most days, you carry the weight again, without complaint, without recognition, with just enough strength left to say yes one more time. The cracks don't come all at once. They arrive subtly, like small tremors before a storm. You find yourself staring at walls longer than usual. You reread text messages, unsure how to respond. Not because they're complicated, but because your mind feels thick, like it's walking through fog. You keep lists everywhere now. on your phone, on sticky notes, in the back of your head, because your memory isn't what it used to be. You forget things that matter, things people count on you for. And each time you slip, the guilt presses in a little deeper. You used to take pride in being reliable. That was your thing, your identity, almost. But now, even that feels like a performance. You go through the motions, smiling when expected, listening with soft nods, offering advice on autopilot. But inside, you're elsewhere, drifting, tired in ways that feel cellular, woven into your skin. And the strangest part? No one seems to notice. Or maybe they do, and they're just too used to you, pushing through it, to ask. You wish someone would ask, just once. Not, can you help with this, or are you free tonight? But, are you really okay? You imagine what you'd say if they did. You picture yourself pausing, taking a breath, and finally saying, actually, no. But the words never come. Because what if they don't know how to respond? What if it makes things weird? What if they back away and you're left feeling exposed, needy, dramatic, too much? So you keep it to yourself. And maybe that's the hardest part of all, pretending you're fine, even when the pretense is hurting you. You've become so used to being who everyone needs you to be, you've forgotten how to be who you need for yourself. You tell yourself, this is just a phase, but it's been months, maybe longer. You don't even remember what it feels like to move through a day without calculating how much energy you have left to give. You used to have dreams. You remember that? Small ones, quiet ones, writing something, taking a trip alone, learning how to say no without the need to explain it. But those dreams sit in a corner now, gathering dust like unread books. You've convinced yourself there's no time, that other people's needs matter more, that being selfless is noble, that your rest can wait. But it never comes, does it? You get by on fumes, on caffeine and guilt, and the invisible high of being needed. And when someone thanks you, it feels good. For a second. Just long enough to keep going. Just long enough to forget that you're running on empty. You notice yourself getting sharper lately. Not cruel, just quicker to feel frustrated. You snap at things that wouldn't have bothered you before. A late reply, an offhand comment, a small mess in the kitchen. Then you apologize too much, overcorrect, blame yourself, wonder if you're becoming a bad person. But you're not bad. You're just tired. And tired people don't always shine. One afternoon, you catch your reflection in a cafe window. You look fine, presentable, smiling at your phone. But in that moment, something flickers. You barely recognize yourself. Not your face, your expression. There's a weariness in your eyes you didn't know how to name. There's a hollowness in your smile you can't unsee. You want to fix it. You just don't know how. The idea of taking a break feels impossible. There's always something, someone, a deadline, a request, an event. You're not sure if you can stop. You're not sure who you'd be if you did. But something in you is stirring, faint, like the first breeze before a season changes. It's not loud yet. It doesn't shout. But it's there. A quiet voice, deep inside, whispering, you don't have to live like this.
You hear it again, that voice inside, soft but persistent. You don't have to live like this. It catches you off guard the first few times. You dismiss it easily, like a passing thought. But it keeps returning, especially in the still moments when the noise of the day has faded and your mind is no longer sprinting between tasks. At night, when the house is quiet, when no one needs you, when the only thing left is you, and the ache you've buried beneath all that kindness, you start noticing small flickers of resentment, not rage, not even anger, just quiet questions that pass through your mind like clouds. Why does no one ever check on me? Why am I always the one staying late? Why can't I just rest without feeling guilty about it? You don't say them aloud, of course. They feel ungrateful, dangerous even, because you've built an identity on being the person who doesn't mind, who's always willing, who makes things easier. And yet these thoughts grow roots. They begin to settle in. You find yourself hesitating more before you say yes. You notice the fatigue behind your smile. You start to wonder, what would happen if I stopped performing this role? Would the world fall apart? Would people be disappointed? Or would life simply go on without your constant effort? You remember a conversation months ago when a friend asked how you were doing and you answered, "I'm good, just tired." You meant it as a throwaway line, a deflection, but you remember how you linger on the word tired. You remember how heavy it felt in your mouth, like it meant more than you were willing to admit. There's a kind of grief that comes with realizing you've taught people to expect your silence, that your availability has become a given, that your kindness has been quietly converted into obligation, not by anyone malicious, but by habit, by repetition, by the slow erosion of boundaries over time. You start to wonder where the line was between kindness and self-erasure, between helping and enabling, between being loved and being needed. You replay old memories, times when you wanted to say no but didn't, times when you hinted at needing help but no one caught it, times when you told yourself it's not a big deal just to get through the moment. But each of those moments added up, didn't they? Like drops in a bucket. And now the weight is almost too much to carry. You feel it most on quiet evenings, when the light softens and your body finally slows down. You sit on the edge of your bed, scrolling through your phone, ignoring unread messages because you just don't have the energy to pretend you're fine tonight. And for a moment, you let yourself feel it. The frustration, the exhaustion, the quiet heartbreak of always being the one who holds things together. It's not that you want people to suffer. You don't want them to struggle or fail. You just want someone to think about you with the same care you extend so freely. You want someone to notice, to ask, to show up. But it's hard to ask for that when you've spent years pretending you didn't need it. So you keep going because that's what you've always done. You wash the dishes, you reply to the email, you send the birthday text, even though you forgot your own cake this year. You show up, again and again, for everyone but yourself. And still, that quiet voice returns. You don't have to live like this. It's patient, gentle. It doesn't scold or shame. It just waits, like a hand resting lightly on your back, reminding you that there is another way. You don't believe it yet. Not fully, but something in you hopes it's true.
You wake up one morning and lie there for a little longer than usual, not because you're tired, though you are, but because something in you just doesn't want to start the performance today. The idea of putting on the pleasant version of yourself feels heavier than usual. You stare at the ceiling, listening to the whir of the fan, the distant sound of a garbage truck outside, the soft hum of a world that seems perfectly content to go on without checking in. The requests begin rolling in before breakfast. A message asking for help with a last-minute task, a reminder about an event you didn't agree to but were somehow added to, someone else's emergency, someone else's stress, all filtering into your day before you've even had a chance to brush your teeth. You feel the familiar pressure tighten in your chest. Your thumbs hover over the screen. The script is ready. Of course, no problem at all, smiley face. But today, you stop. You don't send it. You don't even type it. You just stare at the message for a while. And instead of replying, you put the phone down and walk to the sink. You brush your teeth in silence. You wash your face slowly, like you're trying to wake up a part of yourself that's been dormant for a long time. It's not a rebellion, not yet, but it's the first moment you realize you don't have to say yes. You think about what it would mean to say no, not in anger, not out of spite, just because you don't have the capacity. And you shouldn't have to earn your rest. It's not a luxury, it's not a reward, it's a need. Later that morning, someone asks if you can jump on a call. It's not urgent, it never really is. You look at the request, and for the first time in a long time, you feel your spine straighten, not physically, but emotionally. You type a simple response. Sorry, I won't be able to today. No explanation, no nervous emoji, no apology that twists your insides. You wait for the reaction, the disappointment, the judgment. But nothing happens. No one yells, no one is furious. The world doesn't end. They reply, no worries, another time. You stare at the screen, unsure whether to feel relieved or stunned. You spent so long bracing for punishment that the absence of it feels surreal. Maybe the fear wasn't in them. It was in you. In the years of conditioning, of people-pleasing, of internalized stories that said your value depended on how little space you took up. That moment stays with you. It's small, barely noticeable to anyone else, but it's a pivot point, a subtle shift in a life lived entirely in service of others. It plants a seed. You start noticing the little ways you've abandoned yourself, saying, I'm fine when you weren't, laughing when something hurt, agreeing to things that drained you, letting people talk over you because correcting them felt impolite. Each of these moments now comes back with clarity, like a real rewinding behind your eyes. It's not about blaming anyone. It's about recognizing the patterns. And for the first time, instead of pushing those memories away, you let them surface. You hold them gently. You whisper to yourself, that wasn't okay. You don't scream it. You don't need to. Just the act of acknowledging it feels like truth finally settling into place. That evening, you sit on the couch with a cup of tea, no notifications, no background noise, just you and the soft quiet that used to scare you. Now, it feels like a room that remembers your name. You're still not used to it, the stillness, the slowness, the absence of requests. It feels unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. You watch the sky shift through the window, colors folding into one another like silk. You don't reach for your phone. You don't feel guilty for not being productive. You just sit there, breathing in your own presence. And that voice, the one that used to whisper, you notice it's louder now. You don't have to live like this. You believe it. Maybe not fully, maybe not every day, but for tonight, that belief is enough.
It's strange how quiet your world becomes when you stop over-explaining yourself. when you stop apologizing for your feelings, when you let yourself have boundaries, not the hard, sharp kind that scream, "Stay away," but the soft, steady kind that gently say, "This is where I end and you begin." You always imagined boundaries would make you cold, distant, unlikable. But what you're learning, slowly and gently, is that boundaries don't push people away. They show you who is willing to meet you where you are. It starts in small, almost unnoticeable moments. You don't reply to a message right away, and no one panics. You say, "I can't make it tonight," and your friend simply says, "Next time." You decline a call because you're emotionally exhausted, and for the first time, you don't feel the need to follow up with 5 paragraphs explaining why. At first, it feels awkward, like you're breaking a rule that everyone else seems to ignore. But the more you do it, the more it feels like returning to yourself. People begin to respond differently. Some are confused. They notice that your tone has changed. Not harsh, just honest. Some pull back, as if your silence makes them uncomfortable. Others lean in, curious, maybe even a little inspired. But the most surprising thing? Life goes on. You begin to feel space open up in your day, in your chest, in your mind. For years, every inch of your energy was spent anticipating other people's needs. Now, you catch yourself wondering what you want for lunch, not what's quick or polite or cheap, just what would feel good. You start walking slower, eating slower, thinking slower. It's not laziness, it's presence. There's no dramatic transformation. You don't suddenly become assertive or fearless. You're still gentle, still thoughtful, still caring. But now there's a softness directed inward. You begin to recognize when your energy dips, when your mood shifts, when you're not okay. And instead of stuffing it down or covering it with a joke, you sit with it. You ask yourself what you need, not what would make you better or more productive, but what would make you feel safe or rested or real. Sometimes the answer is simple: a nap, a song, a few deep breaths by an open window. Sometimes it's harder: a hard conversation, a canceled plan, a truth you've been avoiding. You're still learning. Some days you fall back into old habits. You overcommit, you say yes too quickly, you over-explain, and that's okay. Healing isn't linear. It's not a switch you flip. It's a path you walk, slowly, with pauses. There are moments when guilt still creeps in, when you wonder if you're disappointing people, when you worry that you're too much or not enough. But now you have something you didn't before: self-awareness. You catch yourself mid-apology and ask, "Do I really need to be sorry for this?" You reread a message before sending it and ask, "Am I being honest or just agreeable?" That awareness becomes your anchor. And even when your voice trembles, it's still your voice. Even when your hands shake, they're still your hands, reaching for a better way to live. One evening, you find yourself walking through a park as the sun sets. There's no event, no obligation, no schedule, just you and the sound of leaves brushing against each other in the wind. You sit on a bench, stretch your legs, and let the stillness hold you. No one needs anything from you right now. And for the first time in a long time, you don't feel guilty about that. You just feel calm. Not euphoric, not numb, just present. And that's more than enough. you begin to realize how long you've been carrying invisible weight. Not just the responsibilities or favors, but the expectations, the unspoken pressure to be easy, to be accommodating, to not ask for too much, to be the person who makes life smoother for everyone else, even if it means living a life full of gentle self-abandonment. But now, in this quieter version of your days, you notice something else too. The parts of you that had been waiting for space, waiting to breathe, waiting to be chosen, not by others, but by you. There's a kind of grief that shows up in healing. No one really talks about it. The grief of realizing how many years you spent silencing yourself. The grief of seeing how your politeness was often just fear in disguise. You mourn the version of yourself who thought being liked was the same as being loved, who confused being needed with being seen. It's okay to grieve her. She tried her best. You don't hate her. In fact, you feel a strange tenderness toward her now. She kept you safe. She protected you the only way she knew how, by keeping the peace, by saying yes, by making herself small enough to never be a burden. But now, you're ready for more. More truth, more rest, more intentional yeses, and more sacred, unapologetic no's. You start letting people surprise you. You say no to something and they accept it without protest. You speak honestly in a conversation and the connection grows stronger, not weaker. You admit that you're overwhelmed and someone says, "Thank you for telling me. How can I support you?" These small moments feel like miracles. You begin to unlearn the idea that your needs are a nuisance. And yet, not all surprises are good ones. Some people start to pull away, subtly, quietly. They don't confront you. They just stop asking, stop inviting, stop responding with the same warmth. It stings more than you expect. You wonder if you did something wrong, if setting boundaries made you difficult. But then you remember, relationships that require your self-erasure to function aren't relationships, they're contracts, and you're no longer interested in signing those. It hurts, but it also clears space. Space for people who meet you with care instead of convenience, who don't flinch when you say, "I'm not okay today," who make room for your complexity, your quiet, your no. And beyond that, it clears space for you, for mornings without dread, for afternoons where you do nothing and still feel worthy, for evenings that don't end in collapse but in ease. You begin to understand that kindness doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. It means being honest and compassionate and whole. It means caring for others without abandoning yourself in the process. You can be soft without being silent. You can be generous without being drained. You catch yourself one afternoon, making a cup of tea, humming a song you used to love. You're not rushing, you're not multitasking, you're just there, in your body, in your breath, in your moment. And you think to yourself, this is what peace feels like. Not dramatic, not showy, just quiet and real and yours. You no longer feel the constant urge to perform, to earn your rest, to prove your worth. You still help people, still show up, still offer your kindness. But now it comes from a place that isn't scraping the bottom of the barrel. It comes from overflow, from choice. You begin to believe that you're enough even when you're not useful, that you're lovable, even when you're not agreeable, that your needs aren't something to be managed or minimized, but honored. This doesn't make life perfect.
There are still days when guilt whispers through the cracks, when old habits resurface, when you question if you're doing it wrong. But now you meet those moments with gentleness, not shame. You place a hand over your chest, you take a breath, and you say, "It's okay. I'm allowed to take up space." And slowly, steadily, you do.
Not long ago, you thought that if you stopped being that nice one, everything would fall apart, that people would leave, that the warmth in your life would go cold, that without your constant yes, the connections you had would unravel like thread. But now, you're starting to see something else entirely, that the things meant for you, the people, the peace, the belonging, don't require you to disappear in order to stay. In fact, the more you return to yourself, the more genuine your connections become. They may be fewer, quieter, but they're rooted in truth. You no longer feel the need to fill silence just to make others comfortable. You don't rush to smooth over every awkward moment. You don't panic when someone seems mildly disappointed. Discomfort isn't a threat anymore. It's just part of being human. You've learned that holding your boundary doesn't make you unkind. Saying, "I'm not available," doesn't make you selfish. And choosing not to explain your every decision isn't rude, it's self-trust. Still, the echoes of your old patterns show up sometimes. You hear your voice getting softer in a conversation that feels tense. You feel your stomach tighten when you turn down a request. The fear is still there, low level, like a familiar hum in the background. But now you recognize it. You don't mistake it for truth. And over time, the fear fades. You begin noticing how your body responds to this change, how your shoulders aren't constantly pulled tight, how your sleep deepens, how meals actually taste like something because you're no longer eating between panic and pressure. You take your time because time now finally belongs to you. There's an ease in your voice when you speak your mind, a clarity when you name what you want, even if it's just, "I need a quiet weekend," or "No, I don't feel up to it today." These sentences used to feel like rebellion. Now they feel like care. You're also noticing the difference between being liked and being respected. Before, you bent over backward to avoid disapproval. You thought being agreeable guaranteed safety. But now, you see how fragile that approval was, how quickly it vanished when you started standing your ground. Respect is different. It doesn't depend on how convenient you are. It stays even when you say no. And respect, when combined with kindness, creates a space where love can actually breathe. One day, in a small but beautiful moment, someone asks you, "Are you sure you want to do this? You don't have to." And you realize someone is checking in on your capacity, not your availability, not your usefulness, your actual well-being. You pause, smile, and something in you softens. Because that's all you ever wanted, really. To be considered. You're not angry at who you used to be. You needed to be that version of yourself to survive. But now you're learning how to live. Not as someone who exists for others, but as someone who belongs to themselves. And in that shift, everything feels a little lighter. you start to notice the quiet victories. Not the kind that earn applause or likes or public affirmation, but the kind that happen in the privacy of your own life. Like walking past a mirror and not flinching. Like hearing your name and not tensing, expecting someone to need something. Like finishing a day without feeling like you owe anyone an explanation. These small moments feel radical because they are. For so long, your existence revolved around performance, being easy to love, easy to ask, easy to handle. You thought the more likable you became, the safer you'd feel. But likability is slippery. It's based on perception, on context, on others' moods. You could do everything right and still be misunderstood, unappreciated, or forgotten. That used to devastate you. Now you let it go. Not because you don't care, but because you're starting to care differently. Your value no longer hinges on being pleasing. It doesn't rise and fall with someone else's opinion. You still want to be kind, but not at the cost of your sanity. You still want to help, but only when it feels right, not obligatory. There's a distinct difference between giving from love and giving from fear. The former expands you. The latter empties you. You're learning how to give with both hands open, without strings, without self-erasure. And when you don't have anything to give, you're learning how to say that too. Some days you slip. You fall back into old scripts. You say yes when you mean maybe. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You offer more than you have. But now you notice it. Before, you would have scolded yourself. Now you respond with compassion. You take a breath and say, "That was old me. I'm practicing something new." The kindness you used to pour into everyone else, you're learning to turn it inward. To ask yourself how you're feeling before committing. To rest without guilt. To forgive yourself when you're not perfect. You also begin to understand that rest isn't a reward. It's not something you earn after proving yourself. It's not something you need permission to deserve. Rest is your right. So you rest. Without the weight of justification, without the buzzing thoughts of productivity, without the ache of guilt trailing you like a shadow. You take naps in the middle of the day. You say no to plans without faking an excuse. You sit in the quiet and let your mind wander, not toward to-do lists, but toward softness. There's a slowness to this new rhythm, a gentleness, a rhythm that doesn't demand constant output, but invites you to just be. And in that being, you find clarity. You remember things you used to love before life became so noisy. A favorite book, a kind of music, the feeling of walking alone at sunset. You rediscover pieces of yourself that you didn't even know had gone missing. And perhaps the most healing part of all, you begin to enjoy your own company. Not because you're productive, not because you're achieving, but because you're present. Because you're enough. Even in your quietest, least impressive moment, you are still enough. You say no again. This time, it's a little easier. It's a favor from someone who assumes you'll always say yes. The message is polite, but expectant, like they're not really asking, just informing you. The old reflex kicks in for a moment. Your thumbs hover over your phone, already starting to type a soft excuse, a workaround, a sugar-coated, "I guess I can." But then a quiet steadiness settles in your chest. You don't feel angry. You don't feel anxious. You just feel honest. You type, "Sorry, I won't be able to help with that," and press send. No explanation, no guilt, just truth. And you exhale. You're surprised by how calm you feel. You thought standing up for yourself would feel like burning bridges. Instead, it feels like opening windows. You watch the message deliver and lock your phone. Then you do something radical. You go make yourself a snack. You drink a full glass of water. You sit in silence and check in with yourself. Not to evaluate how well you're doing, but to notice how you're feeling. This is what you're practicing now. Care that isn't a transaction. Rest that isn't conditional. Joy that doesn't require permission. Not everyone gets it. Some people bristle at the new version of you, the one with boundaries, the one who doesn't apologize for taking up space. You notice the tension when you don't jump to volunteer, the subtle withdrawal when you don't overextend. You used to panic in those moments. You used to chase their approval, wondering what you did wrong. Now you just observe. You let them feel what they need to feel, because you're no longer contorting yourself into the version of you that pleases them. You've spent too many years trying to be small enough to be accepted. Now you're more interested in being whole. And you're learning that some connections are only strong when you're weak. Some dynamics only work when you stay quiet, agreeable, convenient. You can't carry relationships that collapse under the weight of your boundaries, so you grieve them, gently, quietly, with respect for the roles they once played in your life. But you don't chase them, you don't beg for understanding, you let go, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because every time you protect your energy, you prove to yourself that you're worth protecting. Every time you honor your no, you rebuild trust with the part of you that always knew how. And slowly, the loneliness that once echoed in your solitude begins to soften. You start to enjoy your own rhythm, mornings where you wake up without urgency, afternoons where you rest without justification, evenings where you don't replay conversations, wondering if you upset someone just by being yourself. There's still noise, of course. Life doesn't go silent, but the volume is lower now, manageable, and your inner voice, the one you once silenced for the sake of others, is growing stronger. It's not loud, it's not aggressive, but it's unwavering. You hear it in moments of doubt, in moments when you feel the tug to go back to who you were. It says, simply and gently, you're allowed to choose peace. So you do. Again and again.
You begin to feel the slow rebellion take shape. Not the loud movie scene kind, but something quieter, more sacred. It's in how you answer a call when you want to, not because you feel you have to. It's in the pauses you allow during conversations, without rushing to fill them. It's in how you no longer ask for permission to exist gently, as you are. There's a steady power in that. You used to think being strong meant being invincible, always available, always cheerful, always ready to help. But now,
you understand that true strength often looks like staying still when the world tries to pull you in too many directions. It looks like honoring your limits without apologizing, like choosing rest even when no one gives you permission. Some people still don't understand. They raise their eyebrows when you're not as eager, when you don't volunteer, when you let the silence sit instead of rushing to soften it. They say things like, "You've changed," and they don't always mean it kindly. But instead of shrinking under that, you smile. Because they're right. You have changed. You've stopped performing. You no longer bend yourself into shapes that make others more comfortable at your own expense. You no longer confuse exhaustion for generosity. You no longer accept praise for being the one who always shows up when no one asked whether you should have to. Your presence in the world is no longer transactional. You don't do kindness as currency. You don't offer help as a hope for love. Now, when you say yes, it's real. It comes from a place of desire, not fear, of alignment, not guilt. You say yes when your body is rested and your heart is calm. You say yes when it expands you. And when it doesn't, you say no. There is something profoundly human about that. Not perfect, not saintly, just honest. You find yourself reflecting more and judging less. You remember times when you expected people to read your mind, to offer care you never asked for, to praise you for sacrifices they never saw. And you realize gently that part of healing is not just setting boundaries, but also releasing the silent expectations you once held. You forgive the world for not knowing your limits when you never voiced them. You forgive yourself for thinking love must be earned through self-neglect. There's a peace that settles when you stop trying to be everything to everyone. You start to notice the subtle joys again, the way sunlight spills across the floor at noon, the crisp edge of a clean bedsheet, the sound of boiling water before tea. Things that never stopped being beautiful, just things you stopped noticing when you were too busy managing the expectations of others. Now, with space to breathe, the world feels different. It's not that life has gotten easier, it's that your approach has. You no longer fight so hard to hold everything together. You trust that some things can fall and the world won't end. You trust yourself to know what matters. You trust yourself to say yes and to say no. You trust yourself to rest without needing a reason. You trust that your worth is not tied to how much you give away. And in that trust, something magical happens. You stop chasing love. You start receiving it from people who see you as you are, from moments that meet you gently, and, most importantly, from yourself. You no longer beg to be seen. You simply exist. And that is enough.
You start to notice something unexpected. The more you choose yourself, the more your world begins to soften, not because everything around you changes, but because you've changed how you move through it. The chaos doesn't disappear, but it no longer claims all of you. Other people's expectations still exist, but they no longer drown your own. You learn how to hold things lightly. A request that would have once spiraled into guilt now gets a moment of thought, and sometimes a gentle no. A late reply from someone you care about doesn't send you into overthinking. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head.
You stop carrying tension in your shoulders, waiting for the next invisible obligation to pull you back into the performance. There's a strange and beautiful freedom in knowing you don't owe anyone a version of yourself that erases your needs. Of course, not everyone celebrates your shift. Some people begin to retreat from your life, not dramatically, just slowly, like a boat drifting from a dock that was once so tightly moored. You feel their distance, and some days it hurts. Not because you need them back, but because they were part of the chapter where you didn't know better. The chapter where you mistook being wanted for being valued. Now you recognize the difference. You realize that the people who loved the you who always said yes might not know how to love the version of you that says no. And that's okay. Because your new boundaries are not a punishment. They are not a wall. They are the foundation of a more truthful life. The people who stay, they're different. They ask how you are, not just what you can do. They don't panic when you need space. They don't make you explain your no like a courtroom defense. They understand that presence is not a performance. It's a gift. And those are the people you begin to let deeper into your world. You start to realize that not everyone needs access to you, that not every conversation must be answered, that silence is not rude, it's rest. You choose what you engage in. You stop chasing closure with people who were never willing to meet you halfway. You let go of trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. Instead, you reclaim your time, your focus, your joy. You water the friendships that nourish you. You spend your energy in places where you feel safe, curious, free. You no longer offer your emotional labor as a blanket fix for every crack in someone else's story. You no longer say, "It's fine," when it isn't. You no longer smile to make others comfortable while your own heart aches quietly. And the longer you live like this, the more natural it feels. You wonder how you ever lived differently, how you ever thought constant self-sacrifice was the requirement for being loved, how you ever believed that boundaries made you less kind, less worthy, less lovable. Because now your kindness feels different. It's still warm, still soft, still real, but it's rooted. Not in fear, not in guilt, but in choice. And that choice has become your quiet revolution.
You never imagined that peace could feel like this. Not loud or dramatic, but so deeply still, it almost brings you to tears. It's not that your life has become perfect. You still have difficult days. You still forget to protect your time sometimes. You still feel the pull to over-explain, to over-give, to over-accommodate. But now you recognize it. You pause. You breathe. And more often than not, you choose differently. There's power in that pause. It's where you catch yourself before you fall into the old habit of shrinking. It's where you ask yourself gently, is this something I actually want to do? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's not. But either way, the decision is yours now. Not a reflex, not a fear, not a deeply ingrained script you didn't write. And it's not just in your choices. It's in your posture, in the way your shoulders sit just a little lower, your breath a little deeper, in the way your no longer comes with a paragraph attached. You're learning that the people meant for you will not be chased away by your truth. They will make space for it. You're also learning that rest is not wasted time,
that not every hour must be optimized, not every interaction must be meaningful, not every quiet evening must be filled with something productive. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is nothing at all. To sit, to breathe, to feel your own existence without trying to make it palatable for someone else. There's a sweetness in that kind of nothing, a sacredness. You've started creating little rituals, not for anyone else to see, not for performance, but for you. Lighting a candle before bed, putting on soft music as you make tea, washing your face slowly like it's a prayer, speaking to yourself gently, even when your thoughts feel heavy. These moments aren't grand, but they are holy. They're how you rebuild trust with yourself, piece by piece, how you prove to your own tired heart that you're not going to abandon it anymore. You don't need to be everything for everyone. You don't need to answer every call, reply to every message, be available at every hour. The world will keep turning, even when you turn inward. You start noticing beauty again. Not the obvious kind, but the small, quiet, overlooked kind. The way sunlight hits the floor in the early morning. The way steam curls from a fresh cup of tea. The way silence sounds when you're no longer afraid of it. These things were always there. You were just too busy surviving to notice. Now you're beginning to live. And life, it turns out, doesn't need to be extraordinary to be meaningful. It just needs to be yours. Fully, gently, honestly. You're still kind, still generous, still thoughtful. But now you include yourself in that kindness. Now your generosity begins at home. Now your thoughtfulness extends to the quiet voice inside that says, I need rest. And you listen. And in doing so, you become whole. Not because you fixed everything, but because you finally stop breaking yourself to keep others comfortable. This is the soft becoming, the unlearning, the returning. You are still you, but now you are yours.
The days don't suddenly transform. There's no grand finale, no spotlight moment where everything becomes perfect. Life still brings its unpredictability, its ordinary chaos, messages unanswered, dishes piling up, people asking for more than you can give. But your response to all of it, that's what's changed. Now, when someone makes a request, your first instinct isn't guilt, it's curiosity. You ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? And if the answer is no, you let it be no, without apology, without over-explaining, without mentally rehearsing how you'll justify it. You notice how this shift ripples into everything. Your mornings feel lighter. You wake up without the heavy hum of obligation pressing on your chest. You take time for yourself before diving into the needs of others. You start the day rooted, not rushing. You breathe, you check in with yourself, you ask, what do I need today to feel grounded? Sometimes it's movement, sometimes it's silence, sometimes it's texting a friend just to say hi without any emotional labor attached. You don't need a reason anymore. You don't need to prove your usefulness before you offer connection. Your relationships shift too. Some become stronger, more mutual, more honest, more nourishing. Others fade, and while it stings, it no longer devastates you. You no longer confuse closeness with caretaking. You understand now that healthy relationships can hold both your yes and your no, both your giving and your withdrawing, both your joy and your weariness. You have fewer obligations and more presence. You have more boundaries and less bitterness.
You still help others, still show up when you can, still offer comfort where it matters. But now you do it from a full cup. Now you know when to pause, when to rest, when to step away, not because you're weak, but because you've learned what sustainability feels like. The tension in your body softens. The quiet self-betrayals you once ignored have been replaced by small, consistent acts of self-loyalty. You drink more water. You get more sleep. You say, "I'm not ready for that conversation," without shame. You stop trying to convince people to stay. You let them choose, and you choose you. Even in moments of doubt, you no longer spiral. You sit with discomfort instead of running from it. You speak gently to yourself on hard days, the way you used to speak to everyone but you. You've become a safe place for your own heart. And most of all, you've stopped performing. You show up as you are, quiet, complicated, healing. Enough. You no longer need permission to rest, to exist, to be messy, to take up space. And when the world feels loud again, as it sometimes does, you know what to do. You slow down, you close your eyes, you return to your breath. Because you've learned that peace isn't a destination, it's a practice. And you're practicing every day.
Let's soften everything now. Let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you are. Let your breath slow, not because you're forcing it, but because it finally can. Let the weight of the day slide off your shoulders like a coat that's done its job. You've been carrying so much, quietly, gracefully, often without a single soul noticing. But here, in this stillness, you are seen. You are safe. You are allowed to simply be. You don't have to earn your rest tonight. You've done enough. You've been enough. You are enough. Close your eyes if they're not already closed. Let the quiet wrap around you like a warm blanket. Let the sound of your own breath remind you, you are alive. You are healing. You are home. You are not failing. You are not lost. You're just coming back to yourself. Every soft decision you made today, the boundary you respected, the moment you paused, the time you chose stillness over performance, they mattered. They were victories. They are part of your healing. Healing doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's barely noticeable. But it's there, in every slow breath, in every release of tension, in every moment you choose kindness for yourself. The world will wait. The questions, the noise, the pull of expectation, it will all be there tomorrow. But right now, this is for you. Let it fade. Let it blur. And as you drift, may you remember, you are worthy of love, even in your quietest moments. You are allowed to rest without apology. You are allowed to take up space, just as you are. You've made it here, and now you can let go. Good night. And when you're ready for your next quiet moment, Somni Story will be right here, soft, steady, and waiting.